Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Seeing Red unofficial Arsenal podcast, our live show today. We're recording this live, no pre-recorded stuff with this one being transfer deadline day. And it wasn't expected to be a bit of a hectic kind of relax. We're really relaxed, we thought it was going to be this deadline day. But things have changed because Arsenal have suffered a significant injury. We're going to talk about that, what the implications might be and what we might expect from today. I'm very happy to be joined, as always, by Mr. John Cross. How you doing, mate? You good, Joel?
Yeah, good, thank you. Had a good weekend, did you?
Yes, it was. In terms of Arsenal Premier League action, very good. And it was nice to be able to go up to the north on the train and get home in the same day, which is not always a guarantee. So
No.
I managed to do that.
Definitely not.
I did. Me and Mr. Gary Jacob from the Times did end up having to get a cab from Sheffield across to Leeds because the train was cancelled from Sheffield to Leeds. But
keeping with everything, really. I mean, it's just amazing. That's the story of your season, Tom. To be fair, isn't it? The travel.
It's not been a great for travel plans, but
I didn't hear about that. That must have affected quite a few fans, did it?
Yeah, so mate, it was like a 5-carriage train arrives in Leeds. A 3-carriage train is there to take you to Leeds. So more than half the fans, because there's already people on that train, couldn't get on the train. And then the train that was after that got cancelled. So everyone had to kind of like find their own way there. In the end, it was madness. So yeah, but
wow, welcome to the life of being a football reporter, but much more importantly, a football fan. Absolute disrespect shown towards fans at the weekend in terms of travel is unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. I'll jump to Leeds because it was, we don't worry, we'll get listeners. We will get to transfer stuff. Don't worry. But there was a lot of stuff that happened at the weekend that we do need to get through. And we'll kick off with that Arsenal victory at Leeds, 4-0 win. I mean, I described it, and I won't use the word I used, and I'll shorten it down. But, John, I said Arsenal needed an F-off win, and they got an F-off win at the weekend, certainly with that victory over Leeds.
Yeah, they did. I would call it a statement victory. I think it was also a statement performance because let's not kid ourselves. Leeds have got a surprisingly good home record. What was that? Their third home defeat of the season. Now, bearing in mind where they are on the table, bearing in mind also the atmosphere at Ellen Road, bearing in mind their upturn, which has been remarkable in the last 10 games, I think that's a seriously difficult place to go. And then there's no doubt about it. Arsenal had a few nerves. They've taken 2 points from the previous 3 games. It was a few people were sensing a bit of a wobble. Were they playing good enough? Were they playing well enough? And then into the mix, Bukayo Saka, who, I absolutely love Bukayo Saka. I think he's wonderful. And basically for him to go down in the warm-up and be replaced at the last minute is another blow. And then to deliver that sort of performance, I thought spoke volumes about Arsenal, about Arteta, the reaction, the team, the squad, Madueke. I think we should really massively praise him. Because I tell you what, Tom, it must be difficult. I think, I know you're a professional, but you're in one mindset to be
most
on the
of the
bench.
time.
You're in another mindset, absolutely, to start the game. Yeah. And I think fair play to him. He thought, right, I'm going to seize this opportunity. I'm going to take this chance. And my word, didn't he just? I mean, he was phenomenal, particularly I think in the first half, wasn't he? And then basically, I just thought, what a response! Really good quality performance. Could have won by more. Yeah, and basically, I just thought that to deliver 4 goals away from home is really quite something.
Yeah, it was, and it was really needed for Arsenal because not just because of what would happen later on Sunday with the games with City and Villa, but that loss against Man United, the atmosphere around the Emirates. I said, I think in our show on Monday, I said I'm quite glad they're playing away from home next, just to take kind of that atmosphere away for a game, jump away from the Emirates, because Kairat wasn't exactly, a litmus test for what was going to come. It was a bit of a strange European test where we saw some experiments and some chaos, and obviously they came out with a victory, and it was important to get Kai Havertz involved. So then he was in, the right frame of mind, the right state for the game at Leeds. But it was so important, I thought, that they just could take themselves away, go to a place like Leeds where it's a hostile atmosphere for different reasons, and take a victory in a place. I mean, they've put 3 past Liverpool there. I think they've beaten Chelsea there 3-1 this season. This is a team that's putting up some big results against some big teams, and Arsenal limited them to very little. They cracked them open with set pieces, as they've done against so many sides this season. And then once they'd taken control of the game and they'd opened them up a bit more, the subs of Odegaard and Jesus came on and then completely changed the game so they could just basically go run riot. But it's been the story of Arsenal season. You know, set pieces have come up a lot, John, and the Premier League have now awarded Noni Madueke with the goal that he scored direct from a corner. But it was Zubimendi who made the mistake against Man United last week, and this week responds with a goal himself. So big week for Madueke to step up in place of Saka, of course, who got injured in the warm-up.
Yeah, I must say I'd missed that with the Premier League goal panel. I was at Tottenham yesterday, and basically they stepped in, you know, quite quickly to I think it was more to clear up a bit of a VR mess and controversy to give the goal to Solanke over Gay, when I must say I thought it was a foul, but you know, but blimey, let's scratch over that one. But I do think, I mean, Madueke's delivery, I thought on the corner, it's on target. How can it ever be an own goal? Yeah. I just thought it was bizarre because it was a brilliant delivery. Just because it's quirky in a corner doesn't mean then that it should be an own goal. It puts the goalkeeper under all sorts of pressure. Yes, he's sort of kind of really in a sort of kind of he's really affected by Dominic Calvert-Lewin being in front of him, isn't he? But it was a brilliant delivery, and I must say also I thought Madueke's delivery also for the Zubimendi header to open up things. I mean, that's classic, that is, isn't it? This sort of kind of the inverted, you know, inverted winger, swapping to the sides, cutting inside, beautiful delivery with his left foot, fabulous. And that's what he's about when he's in the zone. And I do think that I mean, it's an opportunity now for him, isn't it? But potentially with Saka out for a bit, however long that might be. And I just thought I loved it, because I have been at times a little bit critical just of his, you know, the way that he's approached things, maybe a bit of mentality, but I just love the way that he did that. I mean, we shouldn't forget the start of the season when Saka missed a few games. Yeah. You know, Madueke really stepped up, seized his opportunity, got into the England setup as well, was playing for England and club and country. And I think there's such a good player there, really, I do. And so I think that is the sort of difference, you know, but I don't know how he's gone from, you know, the Champions League game it was a bit disappointing, to put it mildly, to Ellen Road. But as long as he keeps on doing that, who's complaining? Fantastic performance, I thought.
Yeah, it was really good. I mean, Gyokeres obviously missed that chance when Trossard beautifully played him in behind with that kind of reverse flicked pass through, and you think that's his bread and butter. He's got to be taking that opportunity, but he didn't. And then he gets a harder chance where I think if he's not scoring, he's definitely being fouled and there should be a penalty given. He doesn't thankfully need it because Martinelli puts in the cross of his left boot. Great stretch and finish. Obviously, similar opportunity he added with Miles Lewis-Skelly against Kairat, which didn't go anywhere near the target, obviously. So it was good to see him kind of, you know, make good on that opportunity. And then Jesus comes off the bench, and it was the most Jesus performance ever, where he has two really good chances, misses both of them, and then he has a harder chance and puts it away. So, yeah, it was the most Jesus opportunity you've ever seen in that game, but that is the story of his career at Arsenal. I do want to bring up Martin Odegaard because, you know, we've been talking about him for a few weeks on the show, and we've been talking kind of about the noise that swelled around him a little bit. He's dropped for this game. I think tactically so. I don't think it was necessarily to do with form as much as what some people think. Arteta explained afterwards that, you know, Kai matches up the Leeds physicality a lot more than what Martin does, and I think that showed in the first half. They get their lead, the game opens up, Odegaard comes on, he plays the pass to Martinelli for the third goal, and then he sets up Jesus for the fourth goal. I thought it was just great to see him not, you know, sometimes if you're a captain, you're dropped, you could be slumping, you could be sulking. We've seen it happen. He came on and showed everybody what he's about.
Yeah, look, I do think it was the right call. I'm a big Odegaard fan, and I do think he's a really good captain and leader. I thought he had a real month of purple patch where I thought, oh, here we go, he's back to his best. And then I would say in the last 2-3 weeks, I think he's just tailed off again. I think there's been some quite telling stats about duels and kind of midfield, you know, duels, also known as tackles. I mean, it's just, you know, so, which I think, you know, haven't been the best. And so maybe, just maybe, there was an idea in Arteta's mind to bring in a bit of physicality from the start. And I think, you know, I think Havertz, even though different style of player, I should say, it brings that sort of kind of physical presence to the midfield. Thought he justified it, I must say. Thought he played really well. And then Odegaard, as you rightly say, Tom, comes on and makes a difference. I think that's the beauty of what a substitute can do. He did something similar, didn't he, at Newcastle? Do you remember? And basically, I don't think he started that day, and then basically came on and helped change the game, sort of kind of later on into the contest, and really unlock things and make things happen. So, you know, I think that's a good sign of professionalism there, really. So I thought the balance of the team was right. I was pleased that he started Havertz, because I thought Havertz was so good in the Champions League game that I thought that he'd made a really strong case to start up front. But maybe actually playing midfield gets a bit more air in his lungs, and it kind of gets him even, you know, sort of kind of closer to match fitness.
Yeah, I think so. The Havertz one's really interesting because, like, you think of him coming back, he's like, oh, thank goodness Havertz is back. He's going to be our centre forward because we've had such struggles with that position all season. But he's not really played that attacking midfield role for Arsenal. He's played the left 8 role before for Arsenal quite a bit. But the right attacking midfield role, where he played for Bayer Leverkusen before he signed for Chelsea, he's not really played that role much at all for Arsenal. So I am quite intrigued to see how he gets on there. And now with the knowledge that Mikel Merino is going to be missing, who I think also could have been an option for that position, it's a really welcome return for him. The 4-0 win obviously put Arsenal at that point 7 points clear at the top of the table. Going into Sunday, we know that Spurs have got this terrible record, really good record against Manchester City. But when it's kind of push comes to shove at a point of a season like we saw 2 seasons ago in 23-24, when City could have lost the league at Spurs and instead ended up basically winning the league at Spurs, where Spurs rolled over. I'll be honest with you, John, I had zero expectation yesterday for Tottenham and Thomas Frank. Their home record in itself is deplorable outside of the narrative with City. All of the questions directed towards Thomas Frank were around, you know, another Tottenham manager being asked, do you really want to win this game and hand Arsenal the title? It is quite ironic that that's all that Spurs managers seem to get asked when this game comes around these days. But it is a reality, because a lot of Spurs fans didn't really want their team to get anything from that game yesterday. You were there. Tell me all about it.
What I would say about that is I'm not sure that, and I know that was asked in the press conference. I even saw some commentary about it online. I was there, and basically, you know, good 2.5 hours before kickoff, and I must say, I don't think that was the thing in the ground or amongst sort of kind of fans that I knew, because, I mean, I was even writing about it 21 months ago in my match report. Basically, this was the game, the same fixture, albeit in the sort of kind of penultimate game of the season, where Spurs fans were happy to lose. But I never got that sense yesterday. Why? Because I just think they think we've got bigger things to play here. And also, I do think that first half was so bad from Tottenham. Really, really appalling. Awful. You know, I thought, I mean, Gary Neville described it as a soccer aid game, didn't he? And I basically think that some of those sort of kind of pop stars who play at centre half could actually probably have got a game yesterday. It was just dreadful. I don't, you know, they just weren't competing, and I thought, blimey, this could be 6. And Spurs were so poor, and the City were really good, I thought, first half. And basically, I've rarely seen such a game of 2 halves. I mean, it was just crazy. They were forced into the change at half time, taking off Romero, went to a 4 because the centre half was ill, and then basically went to about 4. Beefed up the midfield with Saka, and then basically suddenly got a liking for it. Maybe City had gone into easy street, but there's a telling stat actually that I used and picked up on, that they've lost 7 points this season, City, from January 1, from goals conceded in the second half. And I think is that right? They've yet to score in the second half. There's something not quite right at sort of kind of a City. I do really like the way they play football. I'm a big admirer of Pep Guardiola, and he was quick to say yesterday after the game, there's 14 games left. Of course, we're not giving up. And he's right. It's 6 points. You know, it would be ridiculous to suggest otherwise. But I do think while Mark Gay has tied them up at the back, I still think there's clearly some issues there. It's not quite the formidable City that we've come to know and respect. And basically, I think I just couldn't believe it, actually. And then I have to say, Donnarumma produces 2 outstanding saves, particularly from Odegaard, I think, the second one. That really actually stopped Spurs completely.
He nearly saved Solanke's scorpion kick as well. Like, he gets a little flick to it. What a strike, by the way.
Well, I know. Immediately made you think of Olivier Giroud.
Yeah, I was going to say,
didn't it?
possessed by an Arsenal centre forward.
There you go. There you go. I knew you couldn't resist. I thought Solanke was fabulous, and Xavi Simons, who I'm a bit mixed about because I wasn't sure whether he'd be a Premier League player, simply because of the physicality of it. He was like a man possessed. Fantastic, absolutely amazing performance.
Yeah,
brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And he deserves every bit of credit. And look, they exposed a bit of a soft centre at City, and yet again a sort of kind of a period of 8-9 days where Arsenal thought the world was caving in, and they suddenly emerged out the other side 1 point worse off against one of their rivals from a position where they were last week. I mean, it's just amazing. Yeah, honestly, it is there for Arsenal to kind of scoop up and go and win, basically.
Yeah, it really is Arsenal's to win. I like saying to win rather than to lose, because I just think it's there for Arsenal. And you're right when you said about, this isn't the formidable juggernaut of Manchester City from 2 seasons ago that did chase them down when Arsenal managed to win every game, bar the loss at home to Villa and the draw at the Etihad in the second half of that 23-24 season. But City just won every single game all the way through till they won it. And the same went for the season before that in 22-23. I remember when City drew at Nottingham Forest and Chris Wood scored to level it there, and Arsenal had just won at Villa where the ball had hit the back of Emi Martinez's head and gone back in the back of the net. City won every single game after that. Those dropped points until the point in which they were crowned champions. Arsenal, of course, didn't. And I think that included a win over Arsenal in that run as well. And it feels different 2 years later, a year later from last season as well, where Arsenal's depth is so significantly greater. They're losing players, but players are coming in, but they're also now getting players back. Calafiori back at left back in the second half of yesterday's game. I'd imagine that he'll probably start the game against Chelsea in the League Cup on Tuesday. We've also got Kai Havertz, as we've already mentioned, come back into squad. Jesus is fully fit and firing and getting goals himself. Gyokeres is even starting to find, maybe a little bit of sharpness. 2 goals in 2 games. Brilliant to see. So there is a lot of positivity about Arsenal right now.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's that fitness, isn't it? It's the sort of the availability. I think is great. And they've got a bit of momentum, and they picked it up. I mean, I thought it was going to be quite a telling few days, to be honest, because you suddenly have the Leeds test, the acid test, then you've got Chelsea, and then in the Carabao Cup, and then you've got another game to come back into. Against Sunderland, and you've got this amazing opportunity. And I thought Arteta's conduct last week was fantastic. I thought he spoke brilliantly around that kind of uncertainty, if you like, and really kind of delivered good public messages, good press conferences, good rabble-rousing, as I love it. I love a rabble-rousing story, mate. And basically, I just thought that was a test of a manager. And basically, sometimes, as we know, Arteta can be a bit moody, a bit difficult. And but I thought he was brilliant because he brought a positivity and an energy through what he said and how he spoke. And I thought it was really good. He just reminded everyone, actually, we're still top. And basically, my team is going to basically be in the driving seat, in pole position. This is nothing to be scared about. Rather, actually, it's something to embrace and actually, be positive about, which I thought was great, and it really set a good tone.
Yeah, it really did, and I think it set them up perfectly, for the upcoming games. They've come through this slump, as we've been calling it. These games without a win, and Manchester City haven't yet kind of come out of their slump. They are also suffering. Yes, they managed to get that win over Wolves, but that's the only win in their last 5-6 games. I think I've won one of the last 6 league games. I mean, that is not form of a team that's looking to hunt down the side currently 6 points ahead of them. And Arsenal have now also opened up that goal difference gap as well. They're 3 goal difference ahead of Manchester City now in the league, which is also important after they were beaten by Man City, and City beat Wolves to kind of claw back that difference as well. And when you've got kind of a points gap, which is potentially going to be reliant upon goal difference, maybe we hope not, but it could be based on it being a 6-point gap at the moment. That's important for Arsenal. And as we mentioned before, they've won games by 2-1 and 3-2s and 1-0 quite a lot this season. The gap's been too small. So to open that gap up, to build that confidence, to score in different ways, familiar ways and maybe less familiar ways as well in that game against Leeds, it gives them great hope. Do you think Villa are now out of it after that loss at home to Brentford?
Well, it was funny yesterday. I was watching the sort of kind of Sky coverage of it, and Jamie Carragher was quite definitive, wasn't he? And I guess that's a 3-result swing. That's the problem. But I do feel as if it just takes one slip up, at the weekend, and it's then back to 4. And so I think we've seen bigger gaps at later stages and still turned it around. I think the element with Villa why people kind of quick to jump on themselves it's over is because it's so unexpected, and maybe they don't have the experience of a title challenge, of a title charge. But I think that I think the injuries is really hitting them hard, isn't it? Tielemans, what a blow! He's a great player. Yeah. Tielemans, love Tielemans, and basically, they've got so many bits and pieces, haven't they? When McGinn, important players here and there. And basically, Watkins obviously suffered something in the midweek, and then they bring in Tammy Abraham, and so they've had to do some business. So I think the odds are against them, but I wouldn't write them off quite yet, simply because they've defied the odds all season. Yeah. And I've kind of lots of admiration really for what they've done this season. I think they've been great, a bit of a breath of fresh air, and they're unexpected team. Maybe they're the unlikely title challengers like Arsenal were in 22-23. And basically just come from nowhere and basically building again. I think it's brilliant actually for the Premier League.
Yeah, I really do. I think it's good that they're up there. I think it's good that Brentford are up there. I think it's good that, Man United in a way, even though I'm an Arsenal fan, obviously, but, seeing Man United, kind of more competitive, making the Premier League a better case, because there's been so much talk about denigrating the Premier League this season about what it is like as a division and what it's like as to watch and the entertainment. But I think there has been a lot of entertainment this season, the Premier League, that's gone really a little bit under the radar. I mean, Liverpool being beaten so often as well by teams that shouldn't be beating them, Chelsea battling away as well, and seeing clubs like Fulham and Everton, in the top half of the table again, is also really key, and it's healthy for the league. Any final thoughts before we move on to transfer stuff?
No, not really, because we'll touch on Merino, I think, in transfers, won't we? Really, and
Saka, I guess, is probably the last.
Saka's the thing. I mean, it did look a painful one, didn't it? I'm always amazed. I mean, I presume you've got to warm up pretty hard to make sure then that basically you don't then overstretch things when the game gets going and you get involved pretty quickly. But it just seems, my word, it doesn't often happen, does it, that players get injured in warm up? And kind of Fury, he was warming up, wasn't he, I think, against Brighton, or did it get that far? And then basically it was a bit, but I think there was an injury, he was going into the game, into the warm-up with a bit of a knock. So it was a strange one, that one. But, I just think that that's a real shame, that, because I think of Saka and maybe slightly lesser degree of Trossard, that they are real difference makers when it comes to unlocking opponents. Yeah. So when teams are really sitting deep, really deep defensively, low block, they're the ones that can cut inside, find a killer pass, and basically deliver it with a cross or with a pass, and basically come up with really something special. So that's why I think, and also I don't think people should overlook the fact that if Odegaard is not playing, then Saka gets the armband. So that's really quite significant, I think. Basically, so he's the leader as well.
100%. Hopefully it's not too bad. Mikel Arteta will be facing the press. I'll be there at the Sugar Royalty Training Centre a little bit later on this afternoon. We'll be hearing about Saka and, of course, Mikel Merino. We're going to discuss in just a second, and any of the potential movements on deadline day, of which today is deadline day. And we are doing this show live. So thank you, everybody that's joining us live in the chat box today. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you've been watching the shows over the last few weeks since we've started it, thank you so much for doing so. We'll try and get some of your questions as well in the chat box if we can throughout. And I see a lot of you in the chat box are asking about Tonali. I can see popping up as well and asking about that. Obviously, this is a report that came in from Florian Pletterberg at Sky Germany earlier on this morning. There is an update for you, and that's that our colleague at the Chronicle, Lee Ryder, has reported this morning that it's understood that Newcastle have instantly dismissed any suggestion of Arsenal and Sandro Tonali. No contact whatsoever, I'm told, says Lee on that story, which I don't think, John, is any surprise to us.
It's not really, because I think he is a top quality player. I love that avatar, by the way. Did you see the police avatar? I love that. That's great. That caught my eye.
You'd catch that before I would.
Absolutely, yeah. Show me age. What a fantastic album that was. Anyway, I think he's a great player, by the way. And I think he would absolutely. There you go again. Thank you, Gunnar. 2003. I think he would be such a good fit because of his energy and his power, his physicality, and it's unbelievable work rate. So I could see that he would fit the mold. But come on, Newcastle at this stage, and then also the issue, I think, would be that Arsenal. I think if they're going to do anything. And I'd be surprised, I have to say, at this stage. I'd be surprised. They'll have to be more creative. And what I mean by when I say that is that basically it's got to be some sort of mad loan where someone pops up and is available, because they've got the kind of squad cost ratios to think about. PSR absolutely went for it last summer in terms of spend and in terms of everything that they did. So I think that... I just don't see that one at the moment. And also, by the way, I think Declan Rice is kind of that player, isn't he? I don't think.
Yeah.
I think Marino's no. So I can't. I don't quite. That's an odd one. I could see it from the quality point of view, but I think that basically, what would Newcastle want for Tonali? They'd want 100, wouldn't they?
You'd be looking for at least 80 million quid minimum. Yeah.
Maybe they could do a loan or something like that.
Why on earth would they agree to that? Exactly. It would make no sense. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
It was. I think it's one of those classic deadline day.
Maybe it speaks into people trying to get busy to make things happen, but I can't. I'd be ever so surprised at that one.
Yeah, look, often one of the things that
like him, by the way, good player.
Look, if you told me Tonali was signing for Arsenal, I'm not going to bat my eyelids and say I'm not. Nah, he's a good player. I just think that environmentally, it just doesn't really work as a move, nor can I see it financially as a deal that works for Arsenal. And I don't think Newcastle would entertain that idea at all. And that does kind of speak to the difficulty, John, of January and deadline day in itself, because Mikel Merino is, to our understanding, going to be out for the majority, it seems, of the remainder of the season. It's hoped that he returns to training before the end of the season. Of course, with the World Cup, he'll be wanting to push to be back as soon as possible. But the likelihood is he's going to miss probably the majority of this with, it seems, a broken foot bone, which is quite significant. We don't know which bone in the foot it is, but it is understood to be a bit of a serious situation, which was hoped it wasn't. But it's turned out that way. But to do a deal in this kind of short space of time for a player that is of the quality that Arsenal require, for a player that covers so many positions so expertly and so experienced in a way, that's a tough order.
Yeah, it is really. And I don't think we should underestimate, the value of Mikel Merino. I think he's a really good, a squad member. And I don't mean to deride him in any way, because I think he's absolutely fantastic as a leader. He's in the leadership group, isn't he? And I think that speaks to his kind of the example that he sets on and off the pitch. Speaks really well, leads really well. He's one of a number of kind of Spanish speakers, has a wonderful relationship with Zubimendi. I just think he's a fantastic player. Also, obviously, he brings a physicality, can get you a goal, can play in different positions, can play up front, can play a false nine, can play different positions in midfield. I think he's a really, really top quality player. I mean, listen, Arsenal say that this sort of kind of the issue really came to light after that Man United game. Sort of wonder whether he's been sort of kind of playing a little bit for a while, maybe, and then, but Arsenal sort of saying that it's come to light after that United game, and then they're left with a decision, clearly, aren't they? Because some of these injuries, you can probably play on with. I know it sounds crazy that you when you've got a fracture, but people do on occasion. But actually, rather than risk it, and rather than risk making it worse or endangering the player, they've taken the decision to kind of act now and basically get that operation done as soon as possible. And that gives him the best opportunity, I think, to be back in training by the end of April, and then maybe potentially, be back in action in May. We'd be naive here to think that Arsenal's title push wasn't the only thing in his mind, because I think he's such a good player and such a good, sort of guy that he's clearly going to be sort of kind of in the Spain squad if fit. So he's got to get himself fit for the World Cup and then potentially winning the World Cup. I mean, imagine that for Merino. I think it was a great guy, imagine lifting the Premier League title and then going on to winning the World Cup. I mean, it's really quite something if you can do both. But I think that's his value. That's his versatility, and that's why I think it's such a difficult one to fill. But let's be clear, Tom. Arsenal have got a lot of options in different positions. And for some weeks, I mean, look, Norgard only made the bench because of that Saka injury and the knock-on effect. So we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that basically they are quite well stocked and staffed in various aspects. But Merino's, I think, particularly a big miss.
Do you think Arsenal will regret letting Ethan Nwaneri leave on loan now?
Personally, I do, yes. I think that basically in the space of 4 days or so, I think Saka and then Nwaneri, I think if you are going to play him wide, and sometimes a lovely player, lovely 10 can start wide and then find his feet, then it has to be on the right-hand side. And because I think he's so much more effective there, as we saw last season. And I think, I think he might have got opportunity in minutes because, Madueke can't go from not playing very much into playing absolutely every game.
Yeah.
And then also he just gives you an option also in the more central area as well. So, look, I can see the benefit for Nwaneri, but in these situations, I think sometimes you have to be a bit selfish. And I think early in the window, you'll know this, I think we both had the same thing, didn't we? That they were reluctant to let him go.
Yeah, initially.
And now I think it's been shown up as to why. I think it's worth remembering, isn't it? I wonder whether Dowman comes into the equation here.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, for people who haven't seen Max Dowman, I think basically he can get, sort of pigeonholed as a wide player because there's sort of kind of lovely sort of players like that often do. But I think he's more 10, potentially an 8. Yes, I know he's very young for that role, but that's him. And then basically, I think he can make it. I think he could, make a difference. I really do. But in terms of seniority at this time and being ready, Nwaneri seems like a bit of a strange one, really, in retrospect.
We haven't really got any insight at the moment, at least until Arteta confirms later on whether or not there even is a clause that would allow Arsenal to recall Nwaneri. That's certainly not anything. Nothing's been mentioned around that yet, but that doesn't mean to suggest that there's not one there. But we felt like we probably would have heard something around that by this point if that was going to happen. I think, from Ethan's perspective, he will want to stay in Marseille. He scored on his debut. He's getting regular minutes. Even if he returns to Arsenal, there's still no guarantee. There's definitely more of a chance he would get game time. But I think Max Dowman's a really important aspect of this. His return to injury. I asked Arteta on Friday, about his timeline, and he said he's back on the pitch now. He's working to get back. We expected he would be back in February. So he would be an obvious candidate to come in to be kind of the number 3 right winger behind Saka and Madueke. And I agree with you, his future lies more centrally, but Arteta does kind of tend to, like, as he did with Nwaneri, to kind of bed youngster players in the wider roles before they then grow into these more central players. So, I think Dowman has shown that he's more than good enough to make an impact on the Premier League stage already and has done. So, when he's back to full fitness, it's strange because we're talking about such a young player who, as Arteta said, is going to school. Like, it's mad, really. But that is the reality.
Have you seen the Declan Rice video, social media clip where he talks about? I don't think I have. No, maybe I missed that. He's back to school. He's kind of in his school uniform or something. Basically. I mean, it's just fantastic, really. And I do think there have been occasions where I think I suppose it's obvious, but he's rocked up at the training ground to sort of train in his school uniform or left as such. I mean, it's absolutely amazing. And I do think people, it was great to see a lot of love for him last week with kind of, signing contract scholarships. And then obviously he's got on the promise of a sort of kind of good pro, surrounded by good people, good family, good network, good setup. And I just think everything's there for him, isn't it? And it's, absolutely fantastic. What an opportunity. It's a joy to watch, an absolute joy to watch. And basically, what a talent.
So of course, last Friday he did agree that pre-agreement to sign a professional contract when he turned 17 on New Year's Eve this year. So by 2027, it's already flying away this decade. Dowman will of course be signed up to that pro deal, and then of course they'll be looking to sign him onto a more of a long-term contract, as they did with Miles Lewis-Skelly. I think just a year after he signed a professional contract, when he turned 18, 19, he was then signing a proper long-term deal as a senior player. Last thing on the deadline day stuff before we look ahead to Chelsea briefly is kind of the impossible question, John, because things change so rapidly. But are you expecting anything today?
No, I'd be ever so surprised. I think the one, would be if suddenly something pops up absolutely out of left field where you could do something on a loan. But even loans these days, come with a big loan fee if the player's very attractive and good. There has to be an issue that basically either someone has to sort of offload someone really quickly. And then also they put so much store and faith into getting the right personalities in the dressing room that I just don't think they saw this one particularly coming this month. So you'd have to move very, very quickly, wouldn't you really? I mean, I'm just trying to think of some crazy last minute deals. I mean, Odegaard is a classic loan, and basically, what a loan signing. Obviously, turned into a permanent. That proved to be Kim Shalstrom. Dear old Kim Shalstrom. Basically, do you remember that one? I mean, that was an amazing last minute loan, wasn't it? And basically, I always tell it. It's a great story about that one, really, because I was sort of, I do feel sorry for the medical department on that one, simply because basically he arrived and basically underwent a medical. And basically, Wenger then spoke at the press conference and then said, he unfortunately, he's got a kind of a fracture in his back, and everyone goes, broken back. And my God, they signed a player with a broken back. I can't believe it. What a joke, and all that sort of stuff. And actually, if you do a bit of digging, they signed the player knowing full well he had a sort of kind of a stress fracture in his back. And basically, it was shown up in the medical thing, but it was that or nothing basically. So they decided to go with that, and then basically, sure enough, he played a role in the semi-final, didn't he? And then basically, he was a player that Wenger had courted for so many years and really, really liked him. So took him despite the injury. It was kind of the way that Wenger spoke about it in press conference, just played into the idea that, oh my God, they've signed a player with a broken back. It wasn't quite like that, but sort of was. The medical department definitely showed up. John.
Is that Sam Dean, our colleague at the Telegraph, has broken the story now that there is no recall clause in the Nwaneri loan. So sorry to cut across you, but it was a big story for our live listeners to.
No, fair dues. I have to say, I'm not particularly surprised if you sign up for that. I mean, the one big disappointment for Nwaneri is that basically he is. Now out of the Champions League, isn't he? So basically, Marseille didn't progress. I mean, that has to be one of the reasons why they sent him there. So I think, while I would have been incredibly surprised if they'd recalled him, because you surely can't change your mind in a week. I think that basically, unfortunately, a big part of the attraction has gone. So that's a real blow, I think.
Absolutely. There's just more reaction to that Tonali story coming out as well. Luke Edwards from the Telegraph has said Newcastle have described stories claiming Arsenal have made a late attempt to sign midfielder Tonali as stupid and complete rubbish. But other than that, it's a good story, says Luke. So it's fair to say that we think the Tonali one has not got legs at this stage. Let's look ahead to Chelsea, John, and think about what is on offer for Arsenal here, because they've already taken a 3-2 lead from the first leg where we were both in attendance for the game at Stamford Bridge to the Emirates for tomorrow night, and we'll have pretty much a full squad available bar those two latest injury issues to Saka and Merino. We'll hear more about those from Arteta later on today, as I've mentioned in this press conference. But Chelsea at home at the Emirates, big opportunity for them.
Yeah. I think the biggest frustration really was Arsenal could have put it to bed in the first game, and basically at 3-1 should have made it 4-1, and then you'd say it's all over, basically. But now you just think, at some point, if Chelsea score first, well, the ties, all bets are off, and we're back to back to square one of the drawing board. I mean, Arsenal have a good record against Chelsea, don't they? Recently, and therefore you'd make them strong favourites. Having said that, I do think I watched that Chelsea West Ham game, and they would have been buoyed by that. I think they would have been flat if they'd lost, or basically even dropped points. But actually, the way that they came back and the way also they showed, similar qualities in Naples against Napoli, I think was something to be aware of. So I really care about this competition. I think it's a big opportunity for Arsenal to kind of go and win a trophy, and I think that's why I think Arteta will take it incredibly serious, go very strong, and basically, go for it and believe that this is a great path and opportunity to get to Wembley and win a piece of silverware.
Absolutely. It's would be Arsenal's first final since 2020, and that FA Cup victory, of course, discounting those Community Shields that Arsenal did make and won. But it's, I think, a really psychological potential boost for Arsenal, and that springboard of an April final, most likely against Manchester City, kind of put a real blow into their hopes of not only silverware at all this season, but into Arsenal's hopes of looking to go on to win the title overall. They've got the squad, they've got the quality. I think that it's important. I don't look at the Carabao Cup on its own as something to hold up and say, what an achievement necessarily. And I don't mean to say that as kind of like a denigration to the tournament, but in the grand scheme of what Arsenal's season is, if they came out of the campaign with just the Carabao Cup, they would be disappointed with that based upon what their hopes are. But it can elevate, I think, other achievements alongside it when you win it.
Well, I think if you look back upon the importance, it was Mourinho's first trophy in English football, wasn't it? And basically, I think Guardiola has always put a lot of soul and faith in the domestic cups. And I actually think it really can, give you a lift. Winning breeds winning, doesn't it? And confidence and so. And I think, therefore, I think it would be a big step forward. And I do think it would be something to treasure. I think the one downside was if you reach the final and lose to Man City, then I think Man City would see it as a big kind of striking a big blow, basically, in the belief in the title. But that's the challenge you're up against. If you want to win, basically, you have to face big challenges, don't you? Really. And so I think that this, it's got all the. I mean, last season's final was a cracker. Liverpool against Newcastle, and Newcastle upset the odds. Brilliant, absolutely fantastic. So I think it's I think it's a big opportunity. I've always put a lot of faith in the domestic competitions, because at the end of the day, you're going to be judged as a manager about what you want. And I know it's the League Cup, and I know that basically, fans will have their eyes on bigger prizes, and rightly so they should. But I think then that basically this is a big opportunity, a big stepping stone, and one that I think Arsenal should cherish. I mean, listen, I'll always go back, and I know kind of sound bit of an old so-and-so here, but basically I always go back to 87. If Arsenal don't win the trophy in 87, in my view, the League Cup, I don't think they'll win the title 2 years later. It gives you a belief, it gives you a confidence, it progresses. I think Arsenal, in fairness, are a bit further down the road than that team and that era was, but equally, I do think, absolutely, I think it still matters.
Yeah, 100%. In a smaller timescale, it could really push Arsenal on in those final games. Who knows? Not only just for the league, but maybe in the FA Cup or the Champions League as well. We've been talking a lot this season about the psychological side of things and the weight and the burden that they've not lifted a trophy in so long, specifically the major ones as well. But to elevate this team to having won something, to take that kind of get the monkey off the back, if you will, I think is really important for this Arsenal team. And to do that before the end of the season is an extra bonus, I think, for this team. So prediction for Chelsea. Go on.
I've got to go Chelsea 3-0 or not. No. I think Chelsea, the one aspect where I really think Chelsea really kicked on is that basically, I think in those early games under Rossini, if Chelsea had lost 4-1, which was so easy when you consider the Merino chance at 3-1, when you consider Gabriel header at 3-1, I think it would have been a very different environment, but they've given themselves hope. And then also, I think Chelsea could have easily lost. I think, what was it, their first, home game in the Premier League against Brentford, but they came through and won, ground it out. And I think slowly, they've progressed under a senior, and I think that basically he's made a difference. And I think therefore they are a dangerous. Wouldn't surprise me if it was a draw, and basically quite a night of nerves at the Emirates.
Yeah, it's. I think, they'd take a draw because it would see them through 100%. But it's going to be a really strange one. I hope that they really build it up and the Arsenal fans can kind of recover some of the noise and the atmosphere and the support that we saw kind of fade a bit in the game against United, because it's a big thing reaching a final. It's also a good practice for those double-legged affairs for the Champions League knockout rounds as well. Just before we go, John, I want to ask you, considering it is transfer deadline day, for your top three, and this is putting you on the spot here, top three all-time January transfer window signings for Arsenal.
For Arsenal, Trossard. I mean,
Trossard absolutely has got to be in the three. Yeah, 100%.
What a bit of business that is. Well, Martin Odegaard.
Am
I going mad?
Yeah. He joined on loan initially and then signed permanently in the summer.
Yeah, that's right, isn't it? He joined on loan. I thought that was a great one. Oh, I tell
Reyes,
you what,
I think of as well.
I was going to say Reyes.
Yeah.
So basically, I think Reyes, right, and obviously, because of the sort of kind of later tragic circumstances, whatever. But I think people sometimes, underestimate and underappreciate him as a player. I think he's brilliant talent, and basically, what his arrival did, it was January 2004, wasn't it?
Yes.
And I thought that basically it gave the Invincibles a real nudge and an extra sort of kind of burst of quality, I think, and really pushed them on, and basically just gave them a bit of a turbo boost. Basically, when you consider what they did that season, I thought he went on to be, have a real sort of kind of mark. And he was an incredibly exciting, aggressive, terrific player, forward player. But I thought what he did in that spell just before the end of the season is exactly what you want from a January transfer, a sort of kind of, to push you on. I think that window where they signed Trossard, I mean, £27 million, by the way, when you consider how important he has been and what a warrior he is, basically, as well, because he refuses to give up in the face of competition. I think it's great. That was the same window as Jorginho, wasn't it? And Kirill. So, I think Jorginho did an all right job, to be fair. So they can do some late ones, but I do think of Trossard. I think basically is a really, really good one.
The other obvious one is Aubameyang. Aubameyang is the other obvious one.
Good shout.
I think Trossard that was an odd one. But Aubameyang is an odd one, wasn't it? Because you'd signed Lacazette 6 months earlier.
Strange. It was so strange, and then it also came at a time of it felt like change was coming. And then basically it felt like kind of the end of the Wenger era. And I must say, I'm never quite sure about how, kind of that one came about and who's driving that one and sort of did. I'm sure, as a manager, you'd always want the best players. There was kind of, you're having him, basically. And it was kind of one of those, really. But it turned out, I mean, listen, he delivered, didn't he? So, controversial at times, but actually, went on to sign another contract, and then basically didn't quite work out from there. But I think, he delivered, so it was good.
Arshavin's another one. Yeah. There's one that nobody's mentioned yet that I think is in my top three, and that's Nacho Monreal.
Okay.
So I think that Nacho Monreal, if I was doing a top three, it'd probably be Trossard, Aubameyang, and then it's a toss-up between Reyes and Monreal for me, because I just think Monreal was such a consistent performer for Arsenal. He worked his way into the team. He knocked out Kieran Gibbs from that starting left-back position. He went on to pick up FA Cups. He scored against Man United, I think, away from home at Old Trafford in a really important game for us on that run. So, I think that Monreal has got to be up there for me as a real potential top January transfer signing. But, there are others. You quickly forget kind of like the players that Arsenal brought in. Thierry Henry came in during that amazing kind of loan period after he joined from New York Red Bulls for a few games to provide one of the most magical moments against Leeds in the FA Cup.
Yeah, absolutely, the king. That was amazing. that was sensational. No, you've knocked me sideways with with Nacho Monreal. That's a good shout there.
Theo Walcott and Adebayor, both January signings.
Oh, yeah. And who was the third player in that window?
Abu Dhabi.
Yes.
Yeah, I think
That was a spending spree. That was January 2006, and then basically that was by his standards a remarkable spending spree. I think Diaby would have been an amazing player had it not been for that terrible injury at Sunderland. Shocking, and you know, and Adebayor. I always maintain this about Adebayor, and this is why it sticks in the core that basically I think, you know, to see him, it feels ungrateful about his time at Arsenal and under Wenger. I think he, from the position where he came in, by the time he left, was the single most improved player I've ever seen. I basically think, and maybe this is a hope for Gyokeres, but basically I think then that from where I thought he was so raw and so, I just couldn't see it, couldn't work it out. And then basically, what have they signed here? And then when he left, he was a really accomplished, strong, dynamic goal scorer who was fantastic. But he improved so much under Wenger and in that team. Fantastic. I thought that was amazing. And that's why I think it always irks me to see him basically, you know, kind of bad-mouthing things and sort of seeing things work out. Because honestly, I think Arsenal did pretty well for him, to be fair on balance.
Yeah, 100%, big time. So your top three, who are you going to
go
with?
Gosh. Trossard, because he's made the difference. I do think Odegaard next, and then Reyes. I'm wondering about Reyes or Odegaard, which order. Maybe I'll go Reyes.
Yeah, I don't know.
Let's be honest, Odegaard feels like a cheat. Yeah, no, he does exactly. We've had the same thought, haven't we? Because he basically quickly became a permanent, and we don't think of him as a loan, do we?
But I don't think he would have signed permanently if he hadn't have joined on loan. You know?
Yeah, fair enough.
Happens. Yeah.
No, and I think he really favoured Arsenal over other clubs because they'd gone for him before, hadn't they? They put in the groundwork and legwork before, and basically thought, right, okay, and this club had chased me for years, so it's great.
Yeah, I'm going to go Trossard, Aubameyang, and then obviously Denis Suarez. No, I'm going to go Thierry Henry just for the magic, just for that moment.
Yeah, for that night. Yeah,
just for that night. Has to be just for that night, and then of course the Sunderland as well. You know.
Well, I was going to say, Arshavin provided that cross, didn't he?
It was kind of like he leaped into the air and kind of just taps the ball past the keeper.
And it immediately makes you think of that kind of two-tone blue strip, doesn't it? With it, strange. Yeah.
It was a really strange kit, that one. I think Arsenal had a horrendous record in it. But Thierry's moment will forever be one of the most magical nights of the Emirates, no doubt. I think the great quote was that, like, he played when he first came to the Arsenal, he was an Arsenal player, and when he came back, he came and scored as a fan. And I love that quote from him when he said he scored as a fan. He got to achieve something that so very few Arsenal fans ever.
Yeah, he comes out with amazing lines, doesn't he, Thierry? Come on, can I quickly throw
go
one?
On.
Thierry or Dennis?
Oh, John. Oh. So if I could tell you which player I think I prefer, if I could only watch the highlight reel of one of those two players forever, it would be Dennis. Because I just appreciate a player who is just the pure talent. That's why, you know, when you get into those Messi Ronaldo debates, and like for me, I always lean towards Messi because I'm like a natural talent type enjoyer of football. Not that Thierry didn't have that, of course he did, but he worked extremely hard for the fitness levels and the speed and the power that he produced, whereas Dennis was just so easy in what he did, in everything he did. So yeah, I'm Dennis, but I love both of them, obviously. You?
Yeah. Oh, you can't ask me that.
You just asked me.
No. I think I would go Bergkamp. I just think Bergkamp was such a game-changing moment for the Premier League, for English football, for Arsenal. The sense of disbelief that we've signed this, you know, amazing world superstar amongst Arsenal fans was really quite something. And I just thought that was astonishing. That, and then basically, you know, I think Henry is just, I mean, record goal scorer.
Yeah.
Unbelievable person. Died in the wall now. Arsenal fan.
Yeah.
And then basically what a spokesman, and basically what a player, what a fabulous, striker and incredible player. So I don't think at the time, that's the point, isn't it? That basically in that particular era, if you watched Arsenal, you didn't realise how lucky you were to watch that team and that era. And it was an amazing time. But for skill, I think, and technique, Bergkamp, and I think Thierry, would probably kind of say, would probably say Bergkamp is so special that even he would pick Bergkamp. I'm not sure, but I'm being generous there. Yeah, probably. I did. It was just over a year ago that we had this sort of kind of Dennis Bergkamp tribute evening. Thierry came along and was so gracious and basically about Dennis, because you could tell that he admired him so much as a person, as a player as well, and was incredibly gracious about him. It was wonderful. So it's great.
Some great discussions to end today's pod, and our first live pod on the show as well. Thank you, those that have been tuning in and listening. Really appreciate you doing so, and those that are listening on catch up as well. John, thank you for time. Tell people where they can, of course, find what's coming up for you this week.
Oh yeah, I tell you what, Tom. One final soapbox thing actually was that I have written about it, and I just think, listen, I know I've been critical at times this season about various things, but I feel some of the, blimey, Arsenal to win at 4-0 at Leeds. And then some of the coverage afterwards and some of the discussions and sort of chat around it in various kind of, across papers, online, TV, radio. I thought, blimey, that's one of the results of the season.
Yeah.
And then it made me think, do you know what? Have Arsenal really been getting enough credit this season? Top of the league, finished top of the Champions League table. They've got a Carabao Cup semi-final second leg to come, still in the FA Cup, fighting on 4 fronts. Isn't it about time that we stop calling them set-piece FC? I class 3 of the goals at Leeds. I know there's discussion over, one or another, whether it's 2, but come on.
Phase of play.
Yeah. I basically at Leeds, I thought, wow, that was a performance, and also stylish football.
Yeah.
Arsenal taking so much stick over basically, not winning, coming up second. So Arteta has to address the issue and has done so brilliantly. And I think then that basically to not give them credit, as certain people seem to relish to do, I think is unfair. So I've had a little look at that and a bit of a blast on that in a piece. And then obviously going with you, I'm sure you'll be there, won't you, as well, to the Chelsea semi-final. So looking forward to that. Big week. Big week.
Really big week, yeah. Yes, obviously all the reaction to today. If there is anything to drop today, we'll be across it. I'll be at Mikel Arteta. I'll be leaving the house in about half hour to go up to Mikel Arteta's press conference as well. We're getting updates from him on January's end and kind of this end to the window, but also updates on Bukayo Saka, hopefully, and any clarity around his injury and his reaction to Mikel Merino, of course, as well. And then looking ahead to this game against Chelsea tomorrow night, of which you'll be able to find all the updates on football.london and, of course, in the Mirror as well. But yeah, beyond that, big game against Sunderland at the weekend. No Granit Xhaka, he's out injured, so he misses his return to the Emirates, which is a shame, really. I hope he still attends, but it's a shame that he can't be involved. But that is a benefit for Arsenal because he's been Sunderland's best player, arguably, this season. So, certainly he's a big miss for them. Kevin Schade being sent off against Villa as well means he misses Arsenal's game against Brentford at the G-Tech in a couple of weeks as well. So that's more relevance in the title race, and Arsenal hope to be put in their place in the League Cup final as of tomorrow. So let's see what happens. John, pleasure as always, my friend.
Great to see you, Tom.
Likewise. Thank you, Chatbox. Thank you, those listening on Catch Up. Then continue to listen to us. Do subscribe to the channel if you've not done so already. And we'll see you on the next one. So keep seeing red.